A wild bear entered a police station. When officers saw why, they couldn't believe it. The night shift was dragging on. Officer Daniel Carter leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against the desk, his eyes flicking to the clock. 2:17 a.m. The station was quiet, except for the occasional crackle of the radio. His partner, Officer Rachel Lawson, sat across from him, scrolling absent-mindedly through her report. It had been an uneventful night, just like every other in their sleepy little mountain town. Then, bang! The front door of the station slammed open so hard it made the windows rattle. Both officers jumped. Daniel's hand instinctively flew to his gun. Rachel shot to her feet, her heart hammering, and then they saw it. A bear, a real, living, breathing, massive brown bear stood in the doorway. For a moment, time froze. Daniel's brain struggled to catch up. His survival instincts screamed, "Run!" Rachel sucked in a sharp breath, her muscles locking in place. The bear was enormous, easily 500 pounds. Its thick fur was dusted with dirt, its powerful chest rising and falling in heavy breaths. It stepped forward, its claws clicking softly against the tile floor. Rachel's pulse pounded in her ears. Bears didn't just walk into buildings, and they definitely didn't step into police stations. The bear's black eyes darted around, scanning the room. Its ears twitched, and then it let out a sound that made Rachel's stomach drop, a deep, pained whimper. Rachel's breath hitched. Did it just cry? Daniel didn't answer. He was too busy staring at what the bear did next. It limped forward. That's when they saw it, the gash on its front leg. Blood dripped onto the white tile, leaving dark crimson stains in its wake. Rachel's throat tightened. "It's hurt," she whispered. Daniel was still frozen, his brain stuck between fight or flight. His fingers twitched near his holster, but he knew. This wasn't an attack. The bear wasn't here to hurt them. It had come for something else, something it couldn't get anywhere else. Help. The bear took another unsteady step forward, then collapsed. The heavy thud of its massive body hitting the floor sent a jolt through the air. It let out another low, exhausted groan, its limbs trembling from either pain or exhaustion, or both. Rachel's hands clenched into fists. Every instinct told her to run, but then the bear did something that changed everything. It looked at her, not with aggression, not with wild, animalistic rage, but with trust. Rachel sucked in a slow breath, forcing herself to stay calm. Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. "What the hell are you doing?" She didn't answer. Instead, she moved, slowly, carefully. Her hands stayed visible as she knelt down a few feet away from the bear. It flinched slightly but didn't pull away. Rachel's heart pounded. "Hey, big guy," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "You need help." The bear let out a deep exhale, a huff of air that sent shivers down her spine. Daniel was still standing behind her, too stunned to move. "Rachel, this is insane." She knew it was, but she also knew something else. If this bear wanted to hurt them, it already would have. She reached slowly into the first aid kit she'd grabbed from the counter. The bear watched. It waited. Rachel's fingers trembled as she pressed a clean gauze pad against the wound. The second she touched it, the bear let out a deep, rumbling growl. Rachel's heart slammed against her ribs. Then just as quickly, the growl faded. The bear let her. It let her treat the wound. Daniel exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "I can't believe this is happening." Rachel worked fast. The gash was deep, but not fatal. It needed stitches, something she obviously couldn't do, but she could clean it. Stop the bleeding. Maybe, just maybe, buy the bear enough time to heal. She pressed the last piece of gauze into place and whispered, "All done, buddy." And then, something even stranger happened. The bear stood up. Rachel's breath hitched as it lifted its massive frame, its dark eyes locking onto hers. For a split second, she swore she saw something in them, something that wasn't just animal instinct. Then, without warning, the bear turned. It walked out of the station. No aggression, no hesitation, no panic. It came for help. It got help, and it left. Just like that. Rachel barely slept that night. The next morning, she scoured every wildlife report, every news article, looking for any information about injured bears in the area. Nothing. Days passed. Then it happened. Rachel was finishing a report when she heard it. A familiar chuff. Her stomach flipped as she rushed to the door. And there, standing just beyond the parking lot, was the bear. But this time, it wasn't alone. Behind it, nestled in the shadows of the trees, were two tiny cubs. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. The mother bear watched her for a long moment. Then, in a movement so subtle it was almost missed, it dipped its head. Rachel's chest tightened. A silent thank you. A quiet, powerful acknowledgement. And then, with one last lingering glance, the bear turned, leading her cubs back into the wild. Rachel stood there for a long time, watching them disappear into the trees, feeling something shift deep inside her. Daniel walked up beside her, shaking his head in disbelief. "No one's ever going to believe this." Rachel let out a soft, breathless laugh. "I don't care if they do," because she knew the truth. Somewhere, deep in the heart of the wild, a bear remembered.